This is Musicably Podcast. Hello and welcome to Musicking for Wellbeing Podcast. There is a sentence that lives in the heads of millions of adults. I'm not good enough. Not good enough to play the piano. Not good enough to sing. Not good enough to pick up the guitar that has been sitting in the corner of the room for 3 years. I have heard this sentence many times, in conversations, in emails from listeners, in the faces of people I have worked with over the years. And every time I hear it, I want to stop and say, wait, that is the wrong sentence. It is not just a negative thought. It is the wrong question entirely. This episode is not going to tell you that you are good enough. I want to do something more useful than that. I want to show you where that question comes from, why it does not belong in a conversation about music, and what it has cost you. The idea that music should be measured by quality belongs to a very specific world. It belongs to professional performance, to the concert hall, the recording studio, the competition stage. In that world, quality makes sense. There are standards, there are judges, there are better and worse performances, and the differences matter. That world is real and has genuine value. Some of the most profound moments of my life happened in that world, sitting in the dark, listening to something far beyond what I could make myself. But that world represents one narrow slice of what music is. The problem is that its criteria have escaped the concert hall and colonized everything else. The standards designed for professional performance are now being applied to a person sitting alone at a kitchen table trying to remember a melody from childhood. That is not a fair application of criteria. That is a category error, and it is doing real damage. For most of human history, the question, am I good enough? Simply did not exist in relation to music. Every known human culture makes music, not some cultures, not the wealthy ones, every culture. The musicologist John Blacking spent years studying music among the Venda people of South Africa. What he found was not talented musicians performing for passive listeners. Everyone participated. Music was not a specialized skill. It was a human activity as natural as walking or talking. Christopher Small gave us a word for this. Musicking. Not music as an object, not music as a product to be judged. Musicking as a verb. Something you do, something with value in the doing, independent of what it sounds like to anyone outside the room. That single shift changes everything, including the question you are allowed to ask. The researcher Thomas Turino draws a clear distinction between two very different kinds of music making. Presentational music, where performers deliver something to an audience, and participatory music, where the goal is not a polished product, but something alive between the people present. And here is what Turino found. The features that count as high quality in the presentational world actively prevent participation. Music that is too complex, too finished, too perfect creates spectators rather than participants. It shuts people out rather than drawing them in. So when you ask, am I good enough to play? You are borrowing a question from the concert hall and applying it to something that has nothing to do with the concert hall. The question does not fit. It was never designed for this situation. Before going further, I need to say something that often gets lost in conversation about participatory music. You do not need another person in the room for musicking to matter. Someone sitting alone with a guitar at midnight, playing the same 3 chords slowly and imperfectly, is doing something complete in itself. Someone humming while they walk, someone picking out a melody on a piano with one finger, following the sound wherever it leads. These are not lesser versions of musicking. They are not warm-up exercises for real thing. They are the real thing. Solo musicking is private. There is no audience. The pressure of being heard does not exist. You can make sound on your own terms, at your own pace, without justification or explanation. And something often grows from that private place. The person who plays alone begins to notice they want to play with others. The path runs from alone to together. Both ends of that path are real. Neither is a compromise. If quality is wrong measure, what is the right one? Not precision, not complexity, not technical achievement of any kind. What matters in solo musicking or in any kind of shared music making is whether the music is alive, whether something is happening between the sound and the moment, between the sound and the people in the room. I wrote recently on the Musicably blog about the Mamuna tribe and about what happened when the musician Daniel Hansen encountered their recordings and expanded them. The people who find this music on YouTube are moved by it. They do not know the full story of how it was made. They are not evaluating its authenticity or its technical credentials. They are simply being reached by it. That is not quality, that is resonance. Beauty works the same way. Nobody decides to find something beautiful. It arrives without invitation. And this is the key distinction I want you to hold on to. Quality is conferred from outside. Someone decides this music meets a standard. Beauty is experienced from inside. It happens to you. The listeners responding to those Mamuna recordings are not applying any standard. The music finds them. No judge required. Now, my favorite philosopher, Roger Scruton, would push back here, and he deserves a direct response. In The Aesthetics of Music, his most rigorous work on the subject, Scruton argues that listening to music is never passive. It requires what he calls an imaginative act, a capacity to move with the music, to follow its logic, to hear not just sound but tone, meaning, and form. The erosion of that capacity troubled him deeply. He spent years watching students lose the ability to hear why Schubert matters in a way a pop song cannot. On his own terms, I agree with him completely. But Scruton never asked the prior question. He assumed the imaginative capacity could be cultivated through exposure and training in the listening tradition. What he did not consider is whether that capacity might itself be rooted in something more fundamental, in the physical, embodied experience of making sound. The person who has never made music may be missing a reference point that no amount of concert attendance can provide. The student who cannot hear musical depth may not need better ears. They may need, for the first time, to feel what it is to make sound with their own body. Scruton's lament and mine have the same cause. Musicking is not the enemy of his aesthetic, it may be its forgotten foundation. The question, am I good enough? Does not simply discourage people. It removes them from their own musical lives entirely. It takes something that belongs to them as human beings and places it behind a gate they have been told they cannot open. That gate is not natural. It was built. Over roughly 4 centuries, as music became increasingly professional and commercial, the role of the ordinary person shifted from participant to consumer. We stopped making music and started buying it. We stopped singing and started streaming. We learned to sit still and listen, and to feel grateful that the professionals were handling the difficult work on our behalf. The result is a population of people who love music deeply and believe, with complete sincerity, that music is not for them. That is not an inevitable condition, it is a cultural distortion, and we have been living inside it for so long that most people cannot see it for what it is. So stop asking if you are good enough. Start asking if the music is alive. Those are completely different questions, and only one of them leads anywhere worth going. The first question hands the power to someone outside you, a teacher, a judge, an imagined audience with higher standards than your own. The second question returns the power to where it always belonged, to you, to the moment, to the sound you are making right now, with whatever you have, wherever you are. You are a musical person, not because you are talented, not because you have been trained, because you are human, and this is what humans do. The question was never whether you are good enough. The question is whether you are ready to begin. If this episode gave you something to think about, I would love it if you subscribe to Musicking for Wellbeing wherever you listen. It helps this conversation reach more people who need to hear it. Thank you for listening. I'm Paulo Becca, and this is Musicably Podcast. See you next time.